What is the one and only way to start building wealth? Ooh, it's a provocative title. The one and only way to start building wealth, that's to have money to build with. I know that seems too simple, but listen to this. If you are spending almost all of your income on trucks and cameras and cell phones and nice drinks and sunglasses and other glasses and everything else, you're not going to have any money left over to invest. It sounds really basic. It sounds overly simple. It sounds not that sexy and exciting. But if you don't create a margin in your own income where you're not spending all of your money and you have some left over to invest, you will never build wealth. Hey, welcome to another video. I'm Brendan. I know that sounds like kind of a spammy way of talking about it, like, oh,
let's build wealth. Oh, just get started investing with my 5 tips.
Like, this is not a scammy, spammy, weird, risky procedure. Think about it objectively. If you could snap your fingers and you could have that car you want and a nicer house, or let's call it $60,000 in cash in the bank as an emergency fund, no debt besides your house, not very nice car, mediocre at best house, and $100,000 invested in a retirement account. You can snap your fingers and have A or B. What do you choose? That's the kind of question we need to ask ourselves. Think of yourself in 5 or 10 years and go, who do I want to look back on and say, yeah, I'm with that guy. I'm glad that I made those decisions because they were tough and they were not the most fun option, but I did the right thing. There's somebody in my neighborhood who I noticed is driving a new G-Wagon from Mercedes. If you don't know what that is, here's a picture. New G-Wagon. Bought one of the most expensive houses in the whole neighborhood. It's a very nice house. And they just bought a boat. So out front, when you drive by, you see new G-Wagon, new boat, beautiful house, and white Jeep Grand Cherokee also that matches the silverish G-Wagon, the silverish whitish boat, and the silverish whitish house. It's sort of like this beautified, like very crafted image of what it looks like to be wealthy. Maybe, I don't know them at all. Maybe he's making a crazy income, and maybe she's a master of the universe and can make a crazy income too, and they could be living well below their means. And honestly, that's what I hope for them. But the scary thing is that when you look at the numbers, most people are not saving very much money. Just because of this recent round of stimulus checks, the actual savings rate for the average American shot way up. It was like 30%. And that's great, but before that, the average was less than 10%. And what that's saying is that the average person is spending almost all their income. Now, if you're looking to start building wealth, how are you going to do that if you're constantly spending all of the wealth that you're getting? And I know that wealth and retirement and investing and all these things can sound really far-fetched, or it can sound like something that is for rich people. Like, maybe someday I'll start building wealth when I have enough to build, when I have enough income to have some extra, when I have enough reason to believe that this is something I can do. I'm convinced that the mentality behind this is where we get tripped up. I want you to challenge the way you're thinking about that, if you're thinking anywhere along those lines, because if you're making $30,000 a year now and you're spending all of it just to live, I mean, that kind of makes sense. If you then make $40,000 a year, will you for sure save a big chunk of that difference, or will you go ahead and just up your lifestyle? Okay, what about 45? All this is very gradual. No big lump sum increase, is very gradual. Over time, maybe you get another little promotion, 50,000. Over time, 55, 60. Maybe 10 years later, you're making $80,000 a year. Great. The number sounds really good. It's a big bump over where you are today, but over time, the transition has been gradual. If you keep that same mentality that you're holding today, odds are you're going to absorb all of that increase into your lifestyle. This is called lifestyle inflation. And the problem with lifestyle inflation is it doesn't allow us any room to build wealth. The difference in that and in the person who builds wealth is very simple. The person who builds wealth self-inflicts limits on themselves. You basically pretend like you can't afford things. And you can do that with a budget. You can do that with online tracking systems and software and mint.com and personal capital and all these other ways. You can do it with paper. I don't care how you do it. The point is, you find a way that makes sense to you to keep track of where your money is going, and you just compare how much you're spending to how much you're making. That's it. If you keep track of that for the month, and then you compare and go, well, I made this much and I spent this much, you know that there's no margin there. If you make $1 million a year, which is an obscene amount of money to make in a year, but you're spending like you're spending now, what's the percentage that you're saving now? The percentage that you're investing now? If it's a teeny tiny percentage, you're in that mode of, I'm going to spend what I make. I'm going to spend on the lifestyle that I am trying to get to. And that belief is just dragging you down. But the problem is, if we're always comparing ourselves to someone 1 or 2 steps above us in the scale of lifestyle, that's an insatiable desire. We'll never get there. Someone will always be richer. Someone will always have a nicer thing. And if our focus is on them instead of where we are now, and our focus is on what they have, and it's not on what we already have and the gratefulness for what we do have, then we're going to be chasing them for forever. Now, how can you do that? Obviously, you can just spend less. That's easier said than done. If you are on the lower end of income, that can be really tough because just paying bills and just getting by is like overwhelming. It can be maxing you out. The easier way, potentially, is to try and make more. You could work more, get another job, or try and self-develop enough to where you're actually adding more value and you can get paid more. Again, these aren't overnight fixes. This isn't some cheapy, lame, sizzling, sexy idea of
just invest in this penny stock and you'll be a millionaire overnight.
Because that's bull. I'm not going to tell you anything that I wouldn't do myself or I haven't done myself. I don't believe in taking extraordinary risks to try and get extraordinary rewards and then we end up losing, and that's not worth it. Now, if you're in a middle income area, maybe you're already spending some on some fun stuff, but you're also saving a little bit, or you're in a higher income area, that's where you really have the most advantage because you can choose to spend less and still cover the necessities of life. I know this isn't as much fun as
a hot stock tip that's guaranteed to make you rich,
or some other cheeseball video on YouTube with a clickbait image and everything else, but the point is that simple is best in the long term. Simple, understandable, believable. Now, what's the kind of saving percentage that I'm talking about? I'm talking about you having at least 20% of your income after taxes that's still yours. Obviously, an amount of money to tell you to save doesn't apply to everybody. If I said you should save and invest $3,000 a month and you'll be set, well, what if I only make $3,000 a month, guy? That doesn't make sense. We can't operate in dollar figures. We should operate in percentages here. So bust out that phone calculator and figure out what your percentage would be and translate that by your paycheck. 20% could be a ton of money right now if you're living paycheck to paycheck, and I feel for you. I've been there. I agree. It is a ton of money. But we got ourselves into trouble gradually. We fall off the wagon of our diets and our goals and our plans gradually. So give yourself some grace and some time to get back on the wagon. Gracefully, slowly transition into it. If you're saving 0% of your income right now, get back into it slow. Start saving 1% or 3% or 5%, whatever you can manage, just by paying attention to where your money's going and compare that to what your paycheck is. I know you can do it. You're watching this video. You're smart enough to care to watch a YouTube video and be this deep into it. You're smart enough to do this. You're set up to succeed already because you have it in you to do this. Start wherever you can and then bump it up over time. If you try and do it all at once, you'll get overwhelmed. You'll feel like you can't predict everything, and then you might give up. You might say, forget it. I can't control everything. I'm giving up. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. But if you stick with this, it's like a muscle. It just grows as you do it. You get better. You get smarter. You can predict more in your own budget, and then it becomes like second nature. And all of a sudden, you're saving 8 or 12% of your income, and you just a few months ago were only saving 3%. And that's awesome. Okay, so now what are we doing with this money? Well, you're not spending it. That's why we're calling it saving it. Ideally, you'd put it in a separate account. So if you can, open a separate bank account where you can put this money other than the rest of your money. Obviously, I'm talking to people that have bank accounts. If you don't have a bank account yet, or you can't get a bank account, separate it in some other way to where you have your spending money and your expenses and everything in one place, and this money is in a separate place. It's a mental thing because you see that it's allocated for a different purpose, but it's also handy because then you know exactly how much is there. and it's no question. It's not muddled together. If you're able to then start investing this money, then that's where your real gains are going to be. Because if it's just sitting in a savings account, you're essentially not earning any interest on it, and you're slowly losing money because of inflation. That's a different video for a different day. For now, concentrate on creating as big of a gap as you can between your expenses and your income. So the earlier you catch this, the better, because if you haven't bought that house yet, if you haven't signed up for that new car payment yet, you have control over these things. And what I'm literally asking and recommending that you do is get something a lot less than you can afford. The bank will tell you that you can buy an incredible, big, awesome house. I made another video about that. I'll put the little link for it up here. You say, no, bank, I'm not going to buy that much house. Your lender for the car buying or the online calculator says you can afford X dollars of car or X dollars for car payment. You just say, no, I'm not going to do that. I know I can. I absolutely can afford that new watch, that new car, that new house, that whatever. I'm choosing to buy something way cheaper than that. And I'm going to take all that extra cash and throw it into investments, into my savings. You're going to change from this person who's living basically paycheck to paycheck, month to month, as high of a lifestyle as you possibly can, and always wanting a better lifestyle, to changing into this person who's thankful for what they have, who's willingly limiting yourself so that you can be cash rich and investment rich. Think about that today as you're going through life, as you're going on a walk, as you're listening to this in the car or while you're going to the bathroom. Think about the kind of future that you want to build for yourself. Know that it's within your power to do that. And honestly, the other alternatives for you to build wealth are maybe you're working for a company and you get company stock. You could live paycheck to paycheck and be given company stock, and eventually if that stock explodes, you could get rich. Sure, that it's a possibility. You could inherit a bunch of money from some rich uncle that dies. Suddenly you're cash rich, way to go. Could happen. You could find an envelope of money on the ground and no one wants it and it's all yours, and now you just have $100,000 in cash. Way to go. Nice. You could try and buy a rental property or a primary home somewhere where the real estate market shoots up in value. Then you sell that place and you go live somewhere out in the boonies, out in Nowheresville, South Dakota, and now your expenses are low, but you have this money from the first property. That could happen. But all these other things are more about chance, and they're more about some far-fetched confluence of events, like all the stars align and you just luck into some money. Like, I'm going to get a lottery ticket, I'm going to do a little scratch off, and I just got $5,000. The problem is if we don't do the work in ourselves to change how we think about money and how we think about our ownership of what we do with it and how that outcome is just, it's based on our inputs. What you choose to do with your money is what you get. If you're spending it all, there won't be any left. So if you don't change your mentality, even if those good things happen to you, odds are you're just going to spend it all. The first step is for us to change our mentality, to create a gap between what we spend and what we make, and to keep doing that. And that's how we build wealth. Thanks for watching. Love you all. Peace.